Good day, junior tuckies. Today I'm going to be doing a lesson on poetic devices. Specifically, we are going to look at juxtaposition, rhetorical question, and style. What is juxtaposition? This is placing two things, usually unexpected, close to one another to create a contrasting effect. You will see that I added the image of the yin and yang sign to remind you what juxtaposition is. It is just that, the contrasting effect. The comparison is usually unexpected or unusual. Juxtaposition is a literary device, and it helps create contrast in literature, songs, images, and in poetry. When to use juxtaposition? You will make use of juxtaposition when placing opposite concepts or objects side by side. It can also be used to develop a character in a story, explore how two unrelated things are actually linked, and 3, supporting a persuasive argument. We also make use of juxtaposition, as I said before, in poetry, art, and in literature. You will see that I added the image of the wine glasses. That is exactly what juxtaposition is, two contrasting ideas and images over here. Then we also have the scales. You can also think of it as having an equal scale. The black contrast is equal to the white contrast, whereas in literature, the one part of the sentence must contrast the other part of the sentence. Let's look at common examples of juxtaposition. I'm sure that most of you know these sayings. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. Beggars can't be choosers. You can't teach an old dog new tricks. And if you have read F. Scott Fitzgerald's The Great Gatsby, the characters of Daisy and Myrtle. Let's have a look at the first example over here. What's good for the goose is good for the gander. This means that whatever is good for one person is good for all. Juxtaposition has been used over here to contrast the idea of one goose versus many geese in a gander. Then, beggars can't be choosers. Basically meaning that if you are needing something, you shouldn't be picky if you're getting it from someone else or someplace. So beggars can't be choosers. It is contrasting the fact that sometimes beggars, people who need things, can't be choosers, people who have all the options in the world. And then you can't teach old dogs new tricks. This is contrasting the idea of an old dog not being able to learn something new or an older person not being able to learn something new. You will also see that I attached 2 images to this slide. The first one over there that looks like a tree, it is contrasted with an atomic bomb. So the atomic bomb representing death, contrasting directly with the tree that obviously represents life. And then the image on the further right-hand side is a man feeding ducks in a lake. You will be able to see the contrast not only in color, in black and white and gray, but also the fact where the man is standing on the bank is completely bare, contrasting to the pond where all the ducks and swans are. Let's look at examples of juxtaposition in poetry. Let's look at the first poem. With tin whistles, mouth organs, any noise, they pipe the way to glory and the grave. Foolish and young, the gay and golden boys, love cannot save. This is an extract from the poem Joining the Colours by Catherine Tynan. She wrote this poem after World War II. You will see in this poem that she has juxtaposed the young and gay and golden boys and how they will eventually die because this is a war poem, and she juxtaposes that against the fact that they have the glory and the grave. Remember that gay in these days meant happy. So she was saying basically in this poem that the young boys were happy, they were excited to go to war, they thought that they were going to be glorified by their country and by their parents. However, most of them unfortunately met an untimely death and found only glory in their grave. Then with a second poem, 2 roads diverge in a wood, and I took the one less travelled by, and that has made all the difference. Now this is the very famous poem The Road Not Taken by Robert Frost. Here he's juxtaposed the two images of the roads splitting, and this is how he's used this literary device very effectively. What is a rhetorical question? A rhetorical question is a question asked in order to create dramatic effect or to point out a very obvious answer. Usually, the answer is obvious and immediately given. The aim of a rhetorical question is for the reader to become more engaged with your writing or to actually question their own thoughts and beliefs. It's most commonly used to persuade writers. There are many different types of literary devices that fall under rhetorical device. When to use a rhetorical question in writing? You can use it to persuade your reader, you can use it to create humor, you can use it to connect to the reader, and then obviously we need to see examples from poetry. So let's look at Percy B. Shelley's Ode to the West Wind. The trumpet, oh, a prophecy, O wind, if winter comes, can spring be behind? The rhetorical question is there. So, Shelley's asking the rhetorical question about seasons. If it's currently winter, spring will eventually come. This is why we do not need an answer for this question. We understand that after winter comes spring. It is obvious. So Shelley has used the rhetorical question in such a way that he wants to make the reader understand that just like the seasons, life will always change. What is style? Style can be defined as the way in which a writer uses syntax, punctuation, diction, and imagery to create their story, to create their poem, to create their piece of art. Style can also be seen as the writer's voice. Here, figurative language and cliché are considered part of style. Let's look at examples of style in literature and poetry. It's important to note that whatever novel you have read, that particular author will have a sense of style, a way in which they write. If you're a bookworm and you just don't like some authors and you can't exactly put your finger on why, it is most likely because you do not like the style of writing in which they write. Let's look at an extract from The Old Man and the Sea by Ernest Hemingway. You did not kill the fish only to keep alive and to sell for food, he thought. You killed him for pride and because you are a fisherman. You loved him when he was alive, and you loved him after. If you love him, it is not a sin to kill him. Or is it more? You will see over here that Ernest Hemingway was known for his very short sentence structure and to-the-point sentences, often not using figurative language in direct speech. Then we have an extract from the poem In Detention by Chris van Wyk. He fell from the 9th floor. He hanged himself. He slipped on a piece of soap while washing. He hanged himself. He slipped on a piece of soap while washing. He fell from the 9th floor. He hanged himself while washing. This poem is an apartheid poem, and Van Wyk decides to change the sentence structure throughout the poem to indicate how ridiculous the excuses were from guards who killed prisoners during apartheid times. I hope this lesson helped you and revised what juxtaposition, rhetorical question, and style is in poetry. Next up is types of poetry.